can. I am live again here this time to hopefully actually discuss Social Security, spousal, and survivor benefits. I will give it another, first person who sees this, please drop a comment. I will give this another few seconds. Hope it works this time. Apologies, I don't know why it didn't work last week or a couple minutes ago. But Social Security, again, this will be awesome. I see a comment here. Good. Cool. All right, we're working. So this session will be, again, Social Security, specifically spousal and survivor benefits. So it's not about your own benefit that you're entitled to as a worker who's paid into Social Security throughout your life. This is for spouses of workers or surviving spouses of workers. So that's what we'll be discussing. Let me start with the dad jokes. As always, I'm proud of these this week. All right. A bear walks into a bar and says, "I'll have a gin and tonic." The bartender asks, "Why the big pause?" The bear looks down for a second and says, "I don't know. I guess I was born that way." Big pause, P-A-W-S, P-A-U-S-E, because he said gin and ... tonic. I can't understand why my calculator just stopped working. It just doesn't add up. Just, doesn't do it. Literally. And finally, I went to a psychic. I knocked on her front door. She yelled, "Who is it?" So I left. That's entry level stuff. If the psychic doesn't know who it is, and that's not a psychic I'm going to pay for. All right. Disclaimer. Yeah. This video is only general explanations and education. It's not specific tax, legal, or investment advice. Before considering acting on anything you see or hear here, first consult with your tax, legal, or investment advisor. Alrighty, out of the way. For those of you who are newish to the group, there's about 150 or so people per week joining, which is awesome. Hopefully everyone's enjoying it. I do this disclaimer because I am a living, breathing financial planner / investment manager. This is what I do for a living. Not these live things. This is obviously just kind of a educational, fun thing I do, but I am in the business of doing this professionally, hence the disclaimer. And for those of you who are interested, this is something I do as my livelihood. So if you ever have questions, considering looking for someone to help you out on an actual sort of professional basis, I'd be happy to be that person you consider. Awesome. All right. So Social Security benefits. This is a really interesting topic. I'm a big, I don't know if fan is the right word. I really enjoy the topic of Social Security. It's super complicated, which I like in that it's a challenge and it's a puzzle to figure out. I do think I'm very well versed on it and spent multiple years studying the depths of Social Security, so I got a good handle on it. But admittedly, I even trip myself up with some of these facts and details. So I do have notes here to keep me in line, but there's lots of like ifs, this, then that's, and there's rules that are slightly different if you're in this situation versus this. So I'm inevitably going to say something that may potentially be wrong. Apologies in advance. Everything I'm saying today is accurate to the best of my knowledge, but again, some of this stuff, unless you stay on top of it every single day, it's like you learn these esoteric rules and details, and then you kind of forget them until you have to look them up again. But I did prep well for this, so hopefully everything I'm saying today will indeed be accurate. So with Social Security, it's important to understand the concept of full retirement age. Now, this doesn't mean when you actually stop working. The technical term FRA, or full retirement age, has no context outside of Social Security world. It is the age where your base Social Security benefit is calculated off of. The assumption is if you take your benefits at that age, your benefit will be X. If you start sooner, it'll be lower. If you start later, it'll be higher. But full retirement age is a technical term where that's sort of your baseline assumption is your base benefit will be assumed as of you started at your full retirement age. So what is your full retirement age? For anyone born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age is 67. For anyone born in 1954 or earlier, your full retirement age is 66. I'm assuming no one here is over, I think, 77, because actually there is a further cutoff down the line. The full retirement age used to be 65. It's since stepped up, but for the most part, anyone born 1954 or younger, your full retirement age is 66. And then anywhere between 1954 and 1960, it transitions 2 months at a clip. So for example, if you're born 1954, your full retirement age is 66. If you're born 1955, it's 66 and 2 months. If you're born 1956, it's 66 and 4 months. And then blah, 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 all the way up until 1960. And again, 1960 or later, your full retirement age is 67. That's all subject to change at some point, who knows? But for now, those are the rules. So why is this important? Again, because lots of things are keyed off of the assumption that you start whatever benefit at your full retirement age. If you start sooner, like I said, sometimes it's delayed. If you start later, it could be increased. So keep that in mind. Again, today we're just focusing on spousal benefits you can get as the spouse of a Social Security recipient, and then also survivor benefits, specifically surviving spouse benefits. So spousal benefits, I'm going to say that word a lot, those are benefits that living spouses can get, and also divorced living spouses can get. It for the most part applies just the same. Survivor benefits are still spousal benefits in that I'm talking about a spouse whose husband or wife died, but the benefits you get as a surviving spouse is a whole different structure and calculation than what you get as a living spouse, when both spouses are still alive. So did I already confuse you? I felt like I just said spouse a lot, maybe a little too much. But all right, let's just start walking through this. Hopefully, it'll start to come together, and definitely jump in with questions. So let me see. There's a couple things here. Jackie asks, spousal benefits would include ex-spouses if you were married more than 10 years, correct? Or are there different rules for ex-spouses? Yes, I will get to that, Jackie. Great question. Hold that thought. Doug asks, my wife and I are the same age, 64, 3 months difference, and basically have the exact same Social Security benefit. We retired 5 years ago and are living off our retirement accounts and plan on, that's a long comment. All right, Doug, I see you wrote a lot here, Doug. I will come back to that offline just to not kind of, slow down the flow here. I'm not sure if this is a statement or a multi-part question you're asking, but I'll hold that thought. I'll try to circle up with this comment afterward, Doug. Thank you, though. All right, spousal benefits. So if you are the spouse of someone who has his or her own Social Security benefit, let me just step back quickly. So in order to be eligible to get Social Security, on your own accord, on your own work history, you basically need to have worked at least 10 years. Technically, it's like 40 quarters is how they do it, but let's just assume 10 years to keep it simple. You need to have paid into the Social Security system at least 10 years. If you did, cool, you're eligible for benefits. Now let's assume whatever, you're in your 60s, you worked your whole career, you are entitled to a benefit of whatever, $2,000 a month. I'm just making that up. So that's you. That's like the number holder or record holder. That's the person whose work history was used to determine the Social Security benefit. So I'm going to try to keep this consistent. So me, I'm married, my wife. Let's assume my wife is entitled to her own benefit. Great. She can take that, whatever. I am entitled to a benefit off her record simply because I'm her spouse. Even if I never worked a day in my life and never paid into Social Security, I can still nonetheless piggyback off her benefit and get myself a benefit as her spouse because she paid into Social Security and she is eligible for her own benefit based on her work record. So that's a spousal benefit. The brief history was, historically there was usually just one spouse who worked, the other one stayed home. And so Social Security decided to provide some benefits to the spouse who wasn't working, not just survivor benefits, because clearly if the working spouse died, that was a big problem because the other spouse never worked and therefore couldn't have his or her own benefit. So they started providing these survivor benefits. It was expanded to also include benefits for spouses who are still alive. The Social Security system is incredibly generous. I mean, it has its flaws, it's far from perfect, and it's often the topic of heated debate in political discussions. But it is a great system in terms of how much it provides. Now, arguably, it's a little too generous and provides too much benefits to too many people in too many circumstances. Hence, the system is strained. Not to get off topic, but projected that the trust fund, the pot of money, of excess money, will deplete itself by 2035, if not sooner, unless changes are made. Changes will be made. It'll probably be 11th hour, but changes will be made. Anyway, from Social Security's creation in 1935, it was pretty stripped down and simple. The government, the system, kept tacking on additional benefits for other people and other scenarios and stuff like that. So there's lots of benefits that are paid. It's not just simply you, the worker, get a benefit. Lots of people can get benefits off your record. Your children, your spouses, your dependent parents, spouses who survive you. Lots of benefits for people. So, not sure I was going with that, but right, yeah, the history of spousal benefits. So yeah, so going back to my example, even if I never worked, never paid Social Security, payroll taxes in my life, I can still get a benefit off my spouse's record, separate from her benefit. She'll still be entitled to whatever she's entitled to based on her record. I can get my own benefit off her record without impacting how much she gets. In order for me as the spouse to actually claim the spousal benefit, my spouse needs to be actively getting her benefit. So if she has not yet started hers, I can't start my spousal benefit. Her benefit needs to be on and coming into her for me to start getting my spousal benefit off her record. Good? The amount of base spousal benefit I'd be eligible for is 50% of whatever her full retirement age benefit is. So let's assume $2,000. So her full retirement age will be 67. If she waits to 67 to start her benefit, she'll get $2,000. I will be eligible to get $1,000 because that's 50% of her 2,000 if and when I start my spousal benefit. Now, here's where it gets complicated. My spouse, as the primary wage earner / recipient here, again, 67 is her full retirement age. She can start her benefit as early as 62, but it will be reduced from $2,000 a month. She can start as late as age 70, and it will be increased from $2,000 a month. Regardless when she starts, whether she starts at 62 or 70 or anywhere in between, once she starts, I can then claim my spousal benefit off her record. And regardless what she's actually getting, whether she claims early or claims late, my base spousal benefit will still be 50% of her age 67 amount. Again, her age 67 amount. Doesn't matter if she starts at 62 or 70, my spousal is still half of her age 67 amount. So in this example, her age 67 amount would be $2,000. My spousal would be $1,000 or half of that. But if I claim my spousal benefit before my full retirement age, I'm also dinged. So that can be reduced from that $1,000 base spousal benefit I'd otherwise be eligible for. I can start as early as age 62 claiming the spousal benefit. Again, assuming my wife already started her benefit. That's the big assumption. She needs to start hers for me to claim my spousal benefit. So assuming she did start hers, I can start my spousal benefit as early as age 62. My full retirement age is also 67 because I was born after, 1960 or later. For every month early that you start, every month prior to your full retirement age early that you start, you have a larger reduction from your benefit. Specifically, in each of the first 3 years prior to your full retirement age, there's an 8.33% reduction. So in my case, my full retirement age is 67. If I start my spousal benefit at age 64, so it's 3 years early, there would be a 25% reduction to what my spousal benefit otherwise would be. And then for every year earlier than those first 3 years, there's another 5% reduction on top of that. So do the math. If I'm claiming, so what? That's 5 years, so that would be 25. That would be 35%. So if I start my spousal benefit at the earliest possible age of 62, it would be $650 per month. And how did I get that? So again, my base starting point spousal benefit is half of my wife's full retirement age amount of $2,000. So my base spousal benefit is $1,000. If I start at 62, there's a 35% reduction for me. So that's going to be $650 is what I'll actually get as a spousal benefit if I start at 62. If I wait till 67, it'll be the full $1,000, and then it's scaled in between depending how early you start. There's a difference every month. It's not one whole year reduction. It's every month early you start. It has its own reduction factor for every month prior to your full retirement age. Let me just see a couple questions here. David Foltz, with interest rates being so low, isn't it even more advantageous to take Social Security later to age 70? Yes. So, yeah, I guess it depends on your options and your alternatives, David, of what you're trying to do. But yeah, the the way Social Security works and the delayed retirement credits it gives you for delaying the start of your benefit as late as possible, that math and that formula was determined decades ago when interest rates were normal, high single digits, if not double digits. Now, with rates so low, they haven't adjusted their formula. So, yes, we're getting more of a benefit now for delaying than we would have mathematically, decades ago. But Social Security hasn't adjusted its formula. So, yes, it is all else equal. It's more advantageous now to wait till age 70 than it was 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, simply because interest rates are so low now. Because there's less alternatives to take the money early and invest it in something safe and stable. Invest safe and stable today will pay you well under 1% interest. Safe and stable 30 years ago was, I don't know, 6, 7, 8% interest probably. So yeah, big difference, David. Melanie asks, so if I've not worked past 15-ish years, so my Social Security amount is going down and my husband collects at 62, would I get extra penalty if I also filed at 62? Yes and no, Melanie. So you say extra penalty. The fact that your husband claims early would not penalize you and your spousal benefit. Because again, regardless when your husband starts his benefit, when you start your spousal, you're always starting with the assumption that it's going to be half of whatever his age, his full retirement age amount is. I'll assume that'll be 67. So it doesn't matter if he starts at 62 or 70, your spousal benefit starts off as 50% of his full retirement age benefit. So there's no, him claiming early doesn't directly penalize you. You claiming before your full retirement age will penalize you, Melanie. So yes, if you file at 62, let's assume your full retirement age is 67, like mine is, you will have a 35% reduction from whatever half of his full retirement age amount would be. Make sense? This is hard to explain because there's throwing around a lot of numbers visually without graphs and calculators showing makes it a bit difficult. So I'm trying to keep this as high level as possible, but can't avoid the numbers and some basic examples and scenarios here. Okay. Paula says, maybe you're going to get to this, but if my own benefit is more than 50% of my spouse's, I would only take my own benefit, right? Yeah, good point. I wasn't going to get to that, but I'm glad you brought that up, Paula. Yes, so if your own benefit will always be higher than half of your spouse's benefit, so higher than your spousal benefit, then yeah, there's likely not going to be upside unless, and hold that thought, I'm going to mention something called restricted application, Paula, in a little bit. Maybe this comes into play for you, maybe it doesn't. It depends when you were born. If it does come into play, this could help. If it doesn't, then yes. If your benefit's higher, you're kind of stuck. You're always only going to be able to get yours. You won't be able to take your spousal because that's going to be lower than yours. All right. And Susan says, or asks, if you retire at 62 and need money to live, can you take Social Security early or live off investments? Does it make more sense to take reduced Social Security and let your money grow, which can be passed on to heirs? Yeah, that's a great question, and almost virtually everybody has that question of when to take Social Security. There's no single right answer, Susan. Generally speaking, I'm going to get off on a tangent here, but there's way too many factors to say. If you're married, that's going to be a very different decision than if you're single. If you're single, it basically comes down to if you think you're going to live past your early 80s, you should delay as long as possible, because then you'll statistically make up the benefit of delaying will more than outweigh the foregone payments you would have otherwise had. That's if you're single. Again, early to mid 80s is that kind of break-even point. If you're married, it's a whole other animal. Then you need to factor into who has the higher historical wages, because there's survivor benefits to it, which we're going to discuss. So yes, your investments can play into it. How much do you want to preserve? If one of your goals is to amass as much pot of money as possible to pass on to your heirs, then yes, maybe you don't want to spend that down. So then maybe you do start Social Security early to preserve those assets. There's lots of things that go into this. There's no simple answer, Susan, but it's a great, completely valid question. Mavis does not like that I have no high-tech visual aids this week. I know, right? I thought about that. I tried to come up with a way to play with construction paper and stuff, but I didn't think anything would add enough value other than me just jerking around playing with paper. So no visual aids this week, Mavis. Sorry. All right, cool. Let me keep going. So yes, so your spousal benefit If you start it below your full retirement age, it will be reduced from what it otherwise would have been. Also, things to keep in mind, and this sort of gets to your question, who was it, Melanie? Susan, about starting Social Security early. If you start before your full retirement age, yes, your benefit will be reduced. I see you understand that, and I think most other people in this group do now as well. Other things to consider: if you are still working, so you're younger than your full retirement age, you're receiving your benefits, and you're still working, your benefits can be reduced by something called the earnings test. Basically, if you earn more than, it's like 18,000 bucks, I have the exact figure. So in 2020, if you earn more than $18,240 per year in the years before the year of your full retirement age, your Social Security benefits will be reduced some. Specifically, every dollar you earn over that $18,000 and change figure, 50 cents of your benefit is going to be reduced. So 50% of your benefit over that amount will be held back and reduced. And you don't make it back. When it's your own benefit and you get hit with this earnings testing, there is a mechanism for them to give you back that payment that they withheld from you while you were working. When it's spousal benefits, there is no such, you don't get it back. So, for example, let's put some numbers to this. You're 62, you start your spousal benefits, and let's say it's $1,000 a month. I don't know. You're still working, and you make let me do some easy math. You make $48,000 and change. So that's $30,000 over this $18,000 earnings test limit. Every dollar over that $18,000 annual earnings limit will reduce your payment by 50 cents. So since we're $30,000 of wages over the annual limit, our benefit's going to be reduced by $15,000 for the year. Do the math. If your benefit was only $1,000 a month to start with, and they need to reduce it by $15,000 for the year, your entire benefit's wiped out. You will not get any spousal benefit because of the earnings test. So basically, you're making too much money. Social Security says you don't really need this benefit early. We're going to withhold it. So it's gone. So in that case, if you're still working and you're younger than full retirement age and you're getting benefits, you need to keep in mind this earning test concept because it could completely wipe out the benefit you'd otherwise thought you're going to get. So Susan, to your question, it may not matter. There may not be any logical reason to take your benefit early if you're still working, because that earnings test could wipe out and reduce all the benefit you'd otherwise get so that you end up getting no benefit anyway. In that case, the answer is made for you. No, don't file for your benefit because you're not going to get any of it. You just might as well wait. Once you turn your full retirement age, this earning test thing goes away. You can earn as much as you want. You can make $10 million a year, it won't matter. Then you can get your full nut of spousal benefit without any reduction for the earnings test. The earnings test is pretty tricky if you've never come across it, but just the gist, the thing to take away, if you're young in the full retirement age and you're thinking about starting spousal benefits, ask yourself, am I still working? If you are and you're making more than like $18,000 a year, your benefit will be reduced some. So you need to think about it thoroughly before you actually start your spousal benefit. Make sense? So that's the earnings test. And these figures change a little bit. So for 2020, it's $18,240. For 2021, they just announced it like a week ago. It'll be $18,960. So those are for all the years prior to the year of your full retirement age. In the year you turn full retirement, that limit's higher. It's like it's almost $47,000 this year. It'll be about $50,000 next year. So the formula is a little different, but just keep in mind, if you, again, claiming earlier than full retirement age, if you're still working, your benefit may be reduced, if not completely eliminated during those years. So keep that in mind. Another thing that can reduce it, so spousal benefits, it can be reduced for claiming early. It can be further reduced because of the earnings test if you're still working. It can also be reduced because of something called the government pension offset. So if you, as the spouse, you have a pension from some government job where you did not pay into Social Security while you were working, the fact that you have that government pension could also reduce the benefits you'd be getting as a spouse. That's something else to keep in mind. And depending how big that government pension is, that can also completely eliminate the entirety of the spousal benefit you'd otherwise get. So lots of things to keep in mind with these spousal benefits. Again, starting early reduces it. The earnings test can reduce it. And if you have a pension from a job where you did not pay into Social Security, that pension can reduce your Social Security spousal benefits. Got it? Again, super complicated, unfortunately. But thankfully, there's lots of great info. The Social Security Administration actually puts out some really good, clean, fairly easy to understand, like brochures and primers on their website and stuff like that. So definitely do a lot of Googling if you have questions, or come to forums like this group. There's another great one, the Social Security Intelligence Members Group, run by Devin Carroll. I'm one of the admins on that group, and there's lots of really knowledgeable members and other admins in that group that add a lot of value and answer questions and stuff about Social Security. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Just looking at some more questions. Layla asked, if divorced, is it best to take your ex-spouse benefit until 70 and then take mine? Hold that thought. I will discuss that in a bit. John says, I have a teacher pension from Missouri. Will my wife's Social Security be affected? She is not a teacher. John, good question. It depends. So not directly. If your wife doesn't have her own pension from a non-Social Security job, I don't think it'll be impacted directly. I'm just thinking out loud. Your benefit will be. I don't know about Missouri. I guess Missouri does not pay into Social Security, Missouri pensions. Assuming they don't, your benefit will be reduced some, John, most likely because of your Missouri pension, if you didn't pay into Social Security while you were a Missouri teacher. Your wife shouldn't directly, but I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know this off the top of my head. If your Social Security is reduced because of your pension, I don't know if that indirectly flows through to the amount that your wife would be able to get as your spouse. I'd have to check on that. I don't think it would, but I would need to check, John. All right. Susan, do pensions count towards earnings for Social Security? No. So the only thing that counts in calculating your Social Security benefit based on your work record is earned income that you had, or specifically earned income on which you paid Social Security payroll taxes. So that would be wages from a job or self-employment income. If you worked somewhere that the employer did not pay into Social Security, this is most common with teachers, like public school districts or even some local governments and stuff. They opt out of Social Security because they have their own pension system. If you work in one of those jobs where you're not actually paying anything into Social Security, then no, you ultimately won't be eligible for your own benefit on Social Security, Susan. But pensions you get, no, because you don't pay payroll taxes on pensions. You pay income tax, but you don't pay Social Security tax on pensions. So those don't add to or build or otherwise impact the amount of Social Security benefit you'd get. All right, I see Cody put a comment here. Andy, let's say the primary earner is age 70 and the lower earning spouse is age 62. Can the spouse take their own benefit at 62, then switch to the spousal benefit at 67? No, no, not in that exact question scenario, Cody. No, if the younger spouse is 62, he or she cannot pick and choose just the spousal or just their own. Again, hold that thought. There's something called the restricted application, which would allow people to do that, but someone who is as young as 62 does not have that option, unfortunately. But I will get to that concept in a bit. All right. So those are spousal benefits in a nutshell, and I walk through the reductions. Basically how the benefits calculated. It's half of your spouse's full retirement age amount, and I walk through the reductions at a high level. This also applies to divorced spouses. So long as you were married at least 10 years, and Jackie, this is what you were asking, so long as your marriage was at least 10 years, you can be eligible for benefits off your ex-spouse. So let's say you were married 10 years, you got divorced 30 years ago. Even now, 30 years after the fact, you can still get spousal benefits off of the record of your ex-spouse, his or her own Social Security record. He or she does not need to know about it. You can go to Social Security Administration, the office and sign up for it. You need like proof of marriage and proof of the divorce decree and whatever. But the other spouse, the one you're divorced from, does not have to know about it. And if and when you do start claiming spousal benefits off your ex-spouse, it will not impact their facts or figures or benefit at all. So not only do they not need to know about it, but they'll never find out about it because their payment is going to carry on untouched, regardless whether or not you claim an ex-spousal benefit off their record. Cool. So you need to be married again at least 10 years. That's the big one to get this divorced spousal benefit. What are my other notes? Now, like with regular spousal benefits, I said, you can't get the spousal benefit until your spouse actually starts his or her own benefit. With divorce spousal benefits, that answer changes a little bit. If you've been divorced at least 2 years from that person, and you're both over 62, you can start spousal benefits even if your ex has not yet started his or hers. So let's back that up. Again, the first big assumption is you were married at least 10 years. If the divorce was more than 2 years ago, and if you and your ex are both 62 or older, you can start spousal benefits off your ex even if your ex has not yet started his or her own benefit. That's a big difference from regular, still married spousal benefits, where the other spouse does need to start his or her own before you can start your spousal. It's different with divorce spousal benefits. Cool? Super tricky, convoluted. As I mentioned, lots of if this then that, and there's always exceptions to exceptions to exceptions. But hopefully this is gelling. Other things to keep in mind with divorced spousal benefits. And again, these aren't survivor benefits yet. We're assuming your ex is still alive. There's the same general calculation process. Your spousal benefit will be half of whatever your ex's full retirement age benefit is or would be. Your divorce spousal benefit will also be reduced if you started earlier than your full retirement age, just like normal spousal benefits. It will also be reduced by the earnings test. And again, that is if you're younger than full retirement age and getting a benefit and still working, your benefit may be reduced based on how much you're earning. So that applies just the same with ex-spousal benefits as it does with still married spousal benefits. And that government pension offset thing still applies just the same. Again, that's if you have a pension from a job where you did not pay into Social Security, your divorced spousal benefits may be reduced, if not completely eliminated, due to the size, the amount of the pension you have from the job where you did not pay into Social Security. Cool fun fact, if you were divorced, if you had multiple 10-year marriages to different exes, you can pick and choose which one you want to use. So, do the math. In theory, you can have potentially 7 or 8 ex-spouses that you were married to for 10 years each. It's possible, not likely, but it's Elizabeth Taylor, for maybe. You were married for 10 years and then left, 10 years and then left, 10 years and then left. So you can have 5, 6, 7, 8 ex-spouses. When it's time for you to come and decide you want to get ex-spousal benefits, you can pick and choose which one of your 5, 6, 7, 8 ex-spouses has the highest benefit, and therefore which one would give you the highest ex-spousal benefit to choose. The analogy is you can basically, when you're currently married, your spousal cart is hitched onto that one horse, that horse being your current spouse. As soon as you divorce, you unhitch your cart. And if you have multiple exes, you can literally take your cart and hitch it on whichever horse would give you the highest benefit. There's your cool graphic for today, Mavis. There's no construction paper, but on the cart, hitching myself onto a horse. So that's a cool thing to know. Again, you have multiple exes where each marriage was at least 10 years. Again, it needs to be 10 years, minimum 10 years. You can pick and choose which which ex you want to try to get benefits off of. All right, let me see some other comments here. So Jackie's just sharing the My SSA site. Yes, for anyone who, great point, Jackie. If you haven't already, even if you're only 20 years old, get yourself an online account at the Social Security Administration. Do it sooner rather than later. A few reasons. First, some identity protection. You going and creating your own account will prevent a would-be fraudster from eventually trying to do it on your behalf. So by you already claiming your Social Security number rightfully, you're minimizing the chances of someone else doing it fraudulently. So that's one. So do it again at any age. Do that if you haven't already. Two, it's just cool to see this stuff. You remember the some people still get it if you're of a certain age, but otherwise, most people, you do not get that annual Social Security statement mailed to you anymore. To save costs and save paper, Social Security Administration stopped sending those out to most people. You may still get it on or around your birthday, or maybe if you're only over 60, they keep changing the rules of who they send these things to. But anyway, on the Social Security website, you can get a PDF version of that full, typically 3 to 4 page statement. That in all its glory is on the Social Security website as a PDF, so you can go see it. It has your estimates of all your benefits. If you take at 62, if you take at 70, if you take at your full retirement age. The other good thing, it shows your entire history of earnings every year since you've had earnings. So me, my first not under the table job was when I was 16. I was a cashier at a supermarket. So I can go back and see in whatever year that was, 1994, I guess, whatever. I was born in 78. So 1994. I can see my $500 I earned part-time working at the grocery store. So you can see your whole earnings history, and it's important to review it because it's possible there's going to be missing years or years that are wrong. So you don't want an understated year. It's possible the employer forgot to report or something else or whatever. If you see glaring errors in your Social Security record, reach out to the Social Security Administration to fix it, because that data they have, that's what goes into your payment. So if it's missing years of earnings, that's not cool. You want to try to get that fixed. How do you do that? You got to dig up old tax returns or pay stubs, or if your employer from then is still around, reach out to them, see if they can retroactively produce information to send to Social Security. But anyway, so that's the 3 reasons why everyone, if you haven't already, should get a online Social Security account ASAP, basically. Thank you, Jackie, for bringing that up. And Jackie says, great, finally some good news after getting divorced. Hopefully you were married at least 10 years. And here's some advice. If your marriage is not going so well, and you're 9.5 years into the marriage, stick it out. Last those 10 years. Do what you have to do to stay married at least 10 years. Do not sign a divorce decree prior to 10 years if you're right at the cusp. I mean, if you're a year into the marriage only, or 2 years, don't stick it out another 8 or 9 years just for the sake of Social Security. But if you're right near 10 years, figure it out. Get yourself to that 10-year mark, because it can and will matter at some point down the road. You'll be thankful you did. Hopefully, usually. All right. Kenan says, so the message is, if both you and your spouse are over 62, just divorce. Sadly, that there are actually some situations where it does make sense. I'm trying to think of where, and maybe in the context of Social Security. I heard some podcasts and other places where there's a really logical financial sense reason to get divorced. So yeah, I don't know. It's not always going to be the case. And in most cases, I don't think it is. But there are some cases where, I forget where, but it did actually make sense to get divorced, technically, financially speaking. All right. Just seeing what other questions we have here. Mavis likes my interpretive dance. Yeah, there we go. That's about the extent of my dancing skills. I'd start frightening people if I tried to do anything more than that. Okay, and Cody's shedding some light on who actually gets physical Social Security statements nowadays, so over 60 it looks like, and are not yet receiving benefits. Good. All right, let me just take, okay, looks like one thing here. Astrid asked, my husband passed away last year. Sorry to hear that, Astrid. I assumed that when I turned 66 in 4 months as a survivor, I would receive his Social Security, including the delayed credits he received after his FRA. Is that correct? Yes, Astrid. Hold on, I'm getting to the survivor benefits, but you're understanding, assuming your full retirement age is 66 and 4 months, yes, your understanding is correct, Astrid. Tom, regarding divorce benefits, for example, my benefit is 1,000 and X is 2,000. Is my total benefit 15, or is it the highest of the two? It's the highest of the two, Tom, and depending on your age, hold that thought, but you may be able to get one and not the other. But yes, you can't double dip. You're going to get the highest of the two, basically. So you would get 1,000 as your own. Sorry, 1,000 XX. Wait. Right. No, you just get 1,000. Right. So half of your X's will be 1,000. Your own will be 1,000. Either way, you get 1,000. All right. Gail asked, I froze my credit due to Equifax and cannot access my Social Security info. I will be 60 in 2021. Will they still mail me a statement? Yeah, that's a good point. So I also, the Social Security website does have pretty good security built into it. They require knowledge-based questions based on Equifax credit report. So it'll be stuff like, of these 5 streets, which one have you ever lived on? Or which one of these 5 lenders have you ever had a loan from? Stuff from your credit report. So Social Security needs to hit your Equifax credit report. It doesn't change your credit score, but they need access to it nonetheless. So if you have a freeze on your credit, like I do for identity protection reasons, I have a freeze on my credit at all 3 bureaus. I had to unfreeze Equifax for a day so I can sign up and create myself a Social Security profile. Once you have your profile created, you can go back and refreeze your credit, Gail. It won't matter for subsequent logins. It's just when you first establish it, they do need access to your Equifax credit report. So you can unfreeze it and do it, or it sounds like based on what Cody shared, you can just wait and hopefully once you turn 60 and going forward, you'll get your physical statement in the mail on your birthday. Can't guarantee that, but it looks like that's what Social Security is doing now with regards to paper statements. All right, so restricted application. This sort of answers a few questions people have had. And it only applies for people who were born prior to January 2nd, 1954. If you were born on January 2nd, 1954 or later, you can shut your ears for a while. If you were born before that, you can still benefit from this. Restricted application means when you do file for a benefit, you can restrict your application to just one of the multiple benefits that are available to you. So for example, going back to like sort of Tom's question, if you have a benefit on your own record and you're also eligible for a spousal benefit off your spouse, this restricted application will say, I want to take just my spousal benefit for now, leave my own benefit untouched, let that continue to grow until I reach age 70 when it'll stop growing, and then at that point switch. I will turn off my spousal benefit and I will start taking my own that's higher. That's restricted application. Again, you pick and choose. You take just the spousal, let your own keep growing. You can only do that if you were born prior to January 2nd, 1954. Everyone used to be able to, but they changed it like 5 years ago to get rid of this little nicety. The other rub there is that you need to be at least your full retirement age to be able to pick and choose which one you want. Now, because of this age cutoff, this window to do this is slowly closing. People who were born before January 2nd, 1954 are already 66, so they are already full retirement age anyway. So if this applies to you, this is something you can possibly do. Again, restricted application. All benefits available to you, you can pick and choose which one you want to start and leave the other ones untouched. Generally, that means you take the spousal and you let your own grow. It'll stop growing at 70, then you switch. You get rid of your spousal and you take your own. That's called filing a restricted application. For those of you who asked, can you take just one or the other? The answer is sort of. If you're of an age, born before 1954, you can still potentially do this. If you're born January 2nd, 1954 or later, you can't. At least not with surviving, at least not with spousal benefits while both spouses are alive. Different story if it's a surviving spousal benefit. Again, there's always exceptions to exceptions with Social Security. That hopefully makes sense enough, the restricted application thing. It's somewhat technical, but it is very valuable for those that it still applies to. And you can also do that with spousal benefits. So I know someone firsthand who did this. Her own benefit is larger than her ex-spousal benefit would be, but she's of an age where she was able to claim the lower ex-spousal benefit as soon as she turned 66 or full retirement age, was able to claim the lower ex-spousal benefit, let her own benefit continue to grow, and she just turned 72 months ago and flipped it. So she turned off her spousal benefit and started getting her own benefit, which was now maxed out because she let it grow until age 70. Really great strategy for those that are still able to take advantage of it. But that window's closing in a few more years, it'll be gone. There'll be no one still eligible based on age parameters and stuff that would qualify for this restricted application. All right, before I move on to survivor benefits, let me just see what other questions we have here. Great questions, by the way. I anticipated there'd be a lot because Social Security is incredibly befuddling and confusing. Um, Susan asks, I am 3 years younger than my husband and he is a higher earner. A Social Security calculator I ran said our best option was for me to take mine at 62, him to take it 70, and me to switch to spousal at 67. Do you agree with that? From your answer to Cody, it doesn't sound like you agree. That could work, Susan. Without knowing your actual facts and figures, I can't say that it would be best. But the gist is you're not even eligible for a spousal benefit until your husband starts his. And in a married couple, generally speaking, the higher earner should delay as long as possible, ideally 70 in most cases. So assuming that happens, if your spouse is delaying till 70, you physically can't take a spousal benefit until 70, when he's 70, when he starts his. So yes, in theory, at 62, you can start yours. It'll be low, it sounds like, not just low because it's lower than his, but low because you're starting it real early and you're going to have it reduced 20, 30%, 35% actually, sorry. But once he starts his, then yes, the spousal benefit, assuming that's higher than what you were getting on your own, yes, you could switch to that. Now just keep in mind the fact that you started yours early, Susan, that early start penalty on yours will carry over to the eventual spousal benefit you'll get. So the amount of reduction you had for starting yours at 62, that reduction will be applied to whatever spousal benefit you'd otherwise be entitled to. Now I hope whatever calculator you were looking at accounted for that and accurately worked that through. But yes, in theory, what you're discussing is possible, especially if your own benefit is super, super low because you had lots of years out of the workforce or had low wages. If yours is super low compared to his, what you're saying could indeed be accurate and make sense, Susan. All right. Layla asked, does Social Security automatically switch you to your own? I don't think so. It'd be cool if they did, but let's assume they don't. In the case I just referred to of someone I know firsthand, she proactively reached out to be like, listen, make sure you don't mess this up, Social Security. You better start me right at 70. And they did. She got ahead of it by 2 months. Let's assume they don't automatically flip to your own. Be nice if they did, but don't bank on it, is my guess. All right. Cool. All right. Next. So survivor benefits. Still, in essence, a form of spousal benefits, because I'm talking about, when your spouse dies, you may be eligible to benefits as a survivor. Now, the process and the calculation and the number for survivor benefits is different than spousal benefits. And when I say spousal, I mean both spouses are alive. When I say survivor, I mean the one spouse that has already died. So, with survivor benefits, the surviving spouse is eligible for 100% of what the deceased spouse was actually getting or was able to get if he or she would have hypothetically started on the day they died. So here's what I mean by that. Let's assume, Susan, going back to your example, and hopefully this doesn't happen to your husband, but your husband's delaying until 70. What if he dies at 69? He did not yet start his benefit. You may be asking, well, he wasn't actually getting a benefit when he died. So as a surviving spouse, what would I get? You would get 100% of what he would have got if he started, effectively on the day of his death at 69. So you'll still get benefit for him having delayed all the way up to the day he died, Susan. That's why it's important for married couples, for the higher earning spouse to delay as long as possible because of that survivor benefit. So the way these survivor benefits work, when there's two spouses, and let's assume each one is getting his or her own benefit, you have a lower earning spouse than the higher earning spouse. When one spouse dies, the lower of the two benefits goes away, and the higher of the two remains for the surviving spouse. So, Susan, I'll use you again. Let me use different fingers this time. So your husband was the higher earner. You were the lower earner. Let's just assume your husband's benefit's going to be $3,000 because he delayed. Yours is only $1,000. If your husband dies first, Susan, your $1,000 benefit goes away. You get the $3,000 that he was getting for life. if your husband, if you predeceased your husband, Susan, he simply keeps his $3,000 benefit. Your $1,000 benefit goes away. So the point is, regardless who goes first, the higher of the two benefits remains for their surviving spouse. That's why Social Security is so powerful and important, to really maximize the higher of the two payments when it's a married couple, because of this survivor benefit thing. Jay asks, what if you're divorced? Same thing. There's divorced, there's ex-spousal survivor benefits for divorced folks as well. I was going to say, hold that thought. Yeah, hold that thought. I'll get to that in a second. But yes, you can, just assuming you don't remarry, and even then you still may be able to. But let's assume you're not remarried. You can, when your ex dies, you can get 100% of what he or she was getting at the time of their death, Jay, even as a divorced spouse. Again, assuming you're married at least 10 years. That's the big, that has to happen. Otherwise, there's no divorce benefits whatsoever. So if you're getting near 10 years, make it work. Ride out the full 10 years. Okay, so as a survivor, you get 100% of whatever your deceased spouse, or the higher of your two, but let's assume the deceased spouse had the higher, you get 100% of what the deceased spouse was getting or could have got had he or she claimed benefits on the day they died. Now, what if your spouse who died started as early as they possibly could at age 62? Well, that stinks, because what if you don't have any benefit and all you have is that eventual deceased spouse benefit, but your spouse took it early? Does that mean you're going to get that lower benefit for life too because your spouse took it so early? The answer is sort of. The lowest amount of benefit you can get as a survivor is 82.5% of your deceased spouse's full retirement age amount. So even if your deceased spouse took it age 62 and their benefit was reduced to 70% of the full retirement age amount, you wouldn't be penalized that bad as a survivor. You would end up getting 82.5% of their full retirement age amount, not the 70% they were actually getting because they took so early. I feel like that came out a little confusing. Hopefully that made sense. But the point is, if your spouse takes super early, you won't necessarily be penalized to the same extent that your spouse was for he or she or him, her, him, whatever, for your spouse claiming that early. As a surviving spouse, when can you claim benefits? You can claim them as early as age 60 or age 50 if you're disabled. Or if you are caring for the deceased person's child and that child is under 16 or permanently and totally disabled, you can get survivor benefits at any time, even if you're only 30 years old, 40 years old, whatever. The reduction is different. Like if you're 30 years old and caring for a 15-year-old child of the deceased spouse, you'll be getting 75% of your spouse's benefit. You won't be reduced because you're starting decades earlier than your own full retirement age. But there is a provision in there. My point is, if you're caring for, generally you have to be at least 60 to start survivor benefits, or 50 if you are disabled, or if you're watching over the deceased person's child, the child needs to be under 16 or totally disabled, permanently totally disabled. Then you can also get survivor benefits. There are reductions if you start early, though. Again, not in the case of caring for his or her child, different story. But just because you can start survivor benefits at 60, let's assume there's no other kids in the equation, you're just simply, you're 61 years old, your spouse just died, you want to start claiming spousal benefits, you want to start claiming survivor benefits ASAP, you can start them because you're 61, but they'll be reduced up to like 30% reduction. If you wait until your full retirement age to start your survivor benefits, then they will be the full 100% of whatever your deceased spouse was getting. And then again, that's why full retirement age is important. So again, the survivor benefit is 100% of what your deceased spouse was getting, but that assumes you're at least your full retirement age when you start that benefit. If you start early, it will be reduced. Again, the reduction is up to 30%. So keep that in mind as well. Also, the earnings test still applies. So if you're 61 and you start survivor benefits off your deceased spouse, but you're still working and making decent wages, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, that's going to reduce your benefit because of the earnings test. Again, the earnings test is if you're young in the full retirement age, getting benefits and working, your benefit may be reduced. Also, again, the government pension offset. If you have a pension from a job in which you did not pay into Social Security while you were working there, that can also reduce your the amount of survivor benefit you'd otherwise be able to get. Just stepping back, I forgot to mention with regular spousal benefits, when both spouses are alive, I said you can start them as early as 62. That's true, but you can also start, again, if you're caring for the primary Social Security record person's child. If that child is under 16 or permanently totally disabled, you can get benefits as the caregiver of that person's child. You do not need to actually be 62 in that case to turn on your spousal benefits. All right, lots of thick stuff going on here. Oh, big thing to keep in mind with survivor benefits. So let's go back to regular spousal benefits. You know how I said that restricted application thing, where if you were born before January 2nd, 1954, then you can potentially pick and choose which benefit you want. So just take the spousal, let your own grow. If you're older than that age cutoff, so January 2nd, 54 or later is when you were born, you cannot do that for regular spousal benefits. Survivor benefits are a very different game. There is no age limit or cutoff. Anyone who's eligible for survivor benefits can do the restricted application thing. So even if you're 62 years old, you're entitled to your own benefit, and you're entitled to a survivor benefit off your deceased spouse. You can go to Social Security and say, I just want to take this survivor benefit, let my own grow, don't touch it. It'll keep growing every month until you hit 70, at which point it stops growing. Then you can switch. You can turn off your survivor benefit and start taking your own benefit. Or vice versa. If your own is super low and always will be, then maybe you take your own benefit and you let your survivor benefit grow. The nice thing about this restricted application thing for survivor benefits, early claiming penalty on one benefit will not carry over to the other. What do I mean by that? So if you start the survivor benefit at age 62, that's earlier than your full retirement age. So that survivor benefit will be reduced some because you're younger than your 67 full retirement age. So that'll be reduced. If you do the restricted application to take just the survivor benefit and let your own benefit keep growing, when you eventually switch, the early reduction penalty from your survivor benefit will not carry over to your own benefit. That will not be reduced. So that's the nice slick thing about this restricted application thing with these survivor benefits, is the early claiming penalty does not carry over when you flip from one to the other. Make sense? Hopefully, or partial sense, I hope, at least. All right, that might be all I have prepared. Yes, it is. Okay, let me go back to other questions here. So Jay, you asked, what if you're divorced? Hopefully that answered whatever question you had, Jay, with my divorce stuff. So divorce, you can get divorce benefits from an ex who's still alive and from an ex who's since passed. Oh, right. Here's a rub. With survivor benefits off an ex. If you are married at least 10 years and you divorce, so long as you don't remarry before you're 60, you can eventually get the survivor benefits off your ex whenever your ex eventually dies. But if you remarry before you're 60, you now lose the ability to ever get survivor benefits off your ex. So it's something else to keep in mind. So if you're, late 50s, you divorced, you have a 10-year plus marriage from your first spouse, you're thinking about getting remarried. If you're close to 60, you should probably wait. Don't get married, until you're at least 60. I don't know if it's 60 or 61. I have to double check. I don't know if it's at least 60 or over 60. But if you're right around there, probably wait if you can. That'll give you some options down the road. And, don't let this drive your whole life, the Social Security thing. But if you're on the fence anyway, or you otherwise have it in your willingness and ability to delay, getting remarried, try to wait, until you're at least 60 or maybe 61. I'd have to double check that. All right. So let's go back to the questions here. David, if one spouse delays Social Security past age 65, they have to file for Medicare rather than being automatically enrolled. That's correct. So when you are already, so Medicare, you have to enroll in 65 unless you already have qualifying coverage through an employer that you're still employed at or something. But otherwise, once you hit 65, you high when you eventually do enroll. If you're already getting Social Security prior to 65, Medicare will automatically enroll you in Medicare when you turn 65 because Medicare is actually administered through the Social Security Administration. If you are not on Social Security by the time you're 65, yes, to David's question, you do need to actively and consciously enroll in Medicare. Again, assuming you don't already have qualifying coverage from an employer you're still at, you will need to consciously enroll in Medicare, David. And next week, by the way, great topic for this live. It's going to be Danielle Roberts, one of the founders of Boomer Benefits, absolute Medicare wizard. We'll be talking all about Medicare, so bring whatever questions you have. She is the expert. I know a decent amount. This is all she does is Medicare. She puts me to shame with Medicare knowledge. So next week's topic will be all about Medicare. You definitely want to come back for that one. Melanie, so if my spouse collected at 62 and collected $2,000 then dies, I would receive their $2,000 at my FRA or earlier. You'd actually get a little. Okay, so a few moving parts here, Melanie. If your spouse collected at 62, he or she took as early as possible. So that $2,000 he or she was getting is going to be reduced like 30% from what the full retirement age amount would be. As a survivor, you would be entitled to no less than 82.5% of what your ex's full retirement age amount was. So let's just assume that would have been $3,000 a month. Even though the actual amount he or she was getting was $2,000 because it started at 62, let's assume the full retirement age amount was $3,000. You would be able to get, if you waited till your full retirement age to start your survivor benefit, you would get 82.5% of the $3,000. And then if you start earlier than full retirement age, that figure would be reduced even more, Melanie. Hopefully that answered your question. There's a few moving parts there. But yeah, so that's an example of if the spouse claims as early as possible and they get their benefit as reduced as much as possible because they started at 62, you'll get a little more than that if you wait till your full retirement age. You won't be penalized because your spouse took so early. You'll get slightly more. You'll get 82.5% of their full retirement age amount versus your spouse would have gotten 70% of their full retirement age amount by taking it 62. Layla asks, what if you have lost touch with the ex-spouse? How would one know to get the ex-survivor? Yeah, how would one know to get the ex-survivor benefit? That's a good question. So if you don't know if your ex is alive or not, you basically have to ask Social Security, be like, what benefits am I eligible for? You can say, I was previously married to such and such. They're going to ask you for the proof of marriage and proof of divorce. With that in hand, they should then tell you you're eligible for benefit of this, this, and this. So that's when you just kind of have to randomly ask every year, hey, did my ex die yet? Did my ex die yet? And Social Security will eventually tell you. You can't just call them up and be like, did my ex die? You actually have to go there, prove you're married, prove you're divorced, and they will tell you what benefits you're able to get. They won't directly say the person died, but by way of saying what benefits you're able to get, you can sort of reverse engineer, okay, yeah, this was, person must have died because this is a pretty big benefit I'm not eligible for. So not a super clean answer, but I don't think you can directly be told that yes, your ex has passed. I don't believe they give that out, Layla. Jay asks, can you get your own Social Security and the spousal death benefit? No, it'll only be the highest of the two. Jay, you can't double dip. So if the spousal death benefit's higher, you'll get that, and yours goes away effectively. Technically, the way it works is you still get yours plus a top-up for the death benefit that'll bring you to the total amount will be the same as what your deceased was getting. but functionally you just get the higher of the two. Technically it's yours plus a top up, but practically it's your smaller benefit goes away and you end up getting the larger benefit that your deceased spouse was getting. Dan, this is a maze of if-then statements. Ha ha ha. Yes. Laughing and crying at the same time inside, Dan. Yeah, incredibly complex. There's good calculators out there. Again, Social Security website's a wealth of knowledge. There's plenty of Social Security calculators as well as aftermarket ones. Like I think it was Dave Fultz said, maximize my Social Security. It's $40 a year. You get unlimited use to it. It can run you through all sorts of scenarios and stuff. That's a pretty good one to have. All right, so Cody clarified. If you're divorced and you remarry before 60, you lose the right to get survivor benefits off your ex. But if you're 60 or later when you're remarried, you still retain the rights to get survivor benefits off of your ex-spouse. Cannon says, I guess this is with regards to Medicare, even if you have employer health benefits, still enroll and suspend. Cannon, I guess you're referring to enroll and suspend Medicare. So a few things here. For most people, Medicare Part A is free. Well, I mean, you paid into it your whole life through payroll taxes, but there's no explicit premium amount you have to pay for most people. So in that case, even if you're still working and have health coverage through your employer, there's often not harm with signing up for at least Medicare Part A, which is the hospital coverage. That's the one you typically don't pay for out of pocket, because why not? It's extra coverage. To the extent your work plan doesn't fully cover a hospital visit, your Medicare Part A should kick in and cover at least some of it. The snag there, this is a topic better suited for next week when we discuss Medicare, but the snag there is if you have an HSA, health savings account, and you're contributing, you need to stop prior to starting any part of Medicare, Part A, Part B, whatever, because you're not allowed to contribute to HSAs once you're on Medicare. So just keep that in mind for those that are working or even not working and have an HSA you're contributing to. You have to stop before you start Medicare. Jay, what if spouse is younger? Can you claim off his first? Do you have to wait until they're 62 to claim? So Jay, I assume you're talking about spouses are still alive, not surviving spouse. If your spouse is younger, can you claim off his first? Do you have to wait until they're 62 to claim? So for spousal benefits, the spouse first needs to be claiming his or her own benefit for you to claim spousal benefits off him or her, Jay. So that presupposes your spouse is at least 62, somewhere between 62 and 70, that he or she is starting their own benefit. Only when they start their own benefit, that then unlocks the door for you to claim your spousal, oops, sorry, I just hit the microphone, for you to claim your spousal benefit off of your spouse's record, Jay. Melanie, will you name the Social Security group? Yes, it is called, okay, so I see Cody sent it, Social Security Intelligence Members Group. So it started by Devin Carroll. Devin Carroll is a fellow in Texas, also an advisor, absolutely loves Social Security. He's got a couple books. He's got a humongously successful YouTube channel with like 300,000 followers. The guy's an absolute juggernaut when it comes to Social Security. So he has this group he started a handful of years ago. It's over 10,000 people now. Again, I'm one of the moderators. Frankly, I'm not that active in it anymore now that my own group here has really gotten legs of its own. I haven't had nearly as much time to hang out and moderate in the other group. But I know the other moderator there, Elizabeth Boardman, is fantastic, knows her stuff really well. She's probably the biggest contributor to that group in terms of moderators. And there's a couple other folks who are also, including Devin, who are moderators who chime in and answer questions. Plus, there's lots of really knowledgeable members in that group who respond with lots of good stuff. All right. Julie, is there a software program calculator for retirement planning that also includes Social Security calculations? Yeah. I mean, there's oodles of retirement planning software. Some are made for direct to consumer, may or may not be that robust, that do fold in some Social Security. Ones that I use, like it's called eMoney, for example. One's made for advisors, really detailed and have lots of good programming capabilities, and you can tweak and modify stuff all you want with regards to Social Security or any other thing about your finances. But that's not available to retail. But yeah, I assume there's stuff out there. Just Google around. There's got to be. Social Security is like the backbone in most retirement plans. So any respectable financial planning software that's intended for retirees or works with retirees has to include Social Security. If not, it's don't even consider it because it's a joke. All right. And Jackie says, fun fact, you can use existing HSA dollars to pay for Medicare premiums. You can just no longer contribute to HSA once you're on Medicare. 100% correct, Jackie. One wrinkle to that, if you have a Medigap plan, so traditional Medicare, Part A, Part B, does not cover everything. There's lots of things it doesn't cover, actually. You can buy supplemental insurance called Medigap or supplement plans that are plans that sit on top of base Medicare, and they'll pay for some or all of those extra things that base Medicare doesn't cover. You can use HSAs to pay for the base Medicare premiums. You cannot use it to pay for the premiums of these supplemental Medigap policies, Jackie, and everyone else listening. Odd that you can't, but you can't. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, Jackie, thanks for bringing that up. All right, looks like that's it for the comments and questions. It went a little long, but it looks like this was productive and fruitful. I hope you found this thoroughly enjoyable and engaging. Super complicated topic, but very important, Social Security. So I try to do this justice as best as possible. Again, definitely come back next week. First time I'm having a guest on. A little nervous. I'm not sure how this is going to flow. As you can see, it's just me sitting here doing my thing. I'm going to have to kind of share the screen and sort of moderate a discussion with someone else. I will still do my dad jokes. Hopefully Danielle likes them. She doesn't have a choice. I'm going to be doing the dad jokes, but yeah, curious to see how next week pans out. But the content will be fantastic. Danielle is a phenomenal speaker. Definitely knows Medicare cold, stone cold. So you'll all definitely get a lot out of next week. So hopefully I see you then. Until then, take care, and I will see you in the group. Bye-bye.